locking down early and severely.
They recognised that this was they were dealing with a highly contagious virus, and the best way of dealing with it was to try to eliminate it. In much of the rest of the world, governments were looking at this through the lens of pandemic influenza. And with that, there was an expectation that the number of cases would be very high, whatever they did. And the best thing they could do would be to minimise the adverse impacts.
Last March, New Zealand closed its borders to almost all non-residents and brought in a 2-week quarantine at a designated facility for those who did travel.
Nobody wants to have border controls, and you wouldn't need them if you've got two adjacent territories or two territories connected by flights, for example, that have both managed to eliminate domestic transmission. It only becomes important whenever you have one country that has and one country that hasn't, and particularly where you have the risk of the spread of the new variants. That has really taken this much higher up the agenda.
As case numbers decreased, restrictions lifted. The policy now, an abundance of caution and constant monitoring. But life in New Zealand is very close to normal. Fiona Mitchell, RTE News.
We're joined now by the President of Epidemiology and Public Health at the Royal Society of Medicine, Dr. Gabriel Scally. Good evening, Dr. Scally, and thanks for joining us. There is increased pressure on governments on both sides of the Irish Sea to bring in greater controls on incoming travellers. From your point of view, what should they do? And from what you've seen so far of what's happening in London, in Belfast and Dublin, what do you think they will do?
Well, we're certainly at a critical point. We've got vaccines coming, but slowly, far slower than any of us would want. But they will work and they will be effective. But we're faced with a very high incidence of the virus, of cases of the virus, across quite a number of countries in Europe. And what's more worrying, because there is so much virus replication going on all around the world, we're getting new variants pop up, and variants with potentially very, very dangerous characteristics. The big worry being that one of them will render those vaccines only partially effective. So in that context, the best thing to do is to put very tight public health controls on ports and airports and make sure you can keep the virus out and these variants out. This should have been done a long time ago, of course, but now there's another opportunity to do the right thing and put those controls in place. Now, as for how things are going in that context, I think the UK government is thinking about it, but they've been very slow in almost everything they've done about the pandemic. You really need to get ahead of this virus, and we need to get ahead of these mutations. So my advice in Ireland would be that the Assembly Executive and the Irish government need to sit down together and, if they could, please lay aside their political differences and their no doubt deeply held views and prejudices and policy positions, and just do the right thing for all the people on this island and put those controls in place, because it's the best thing they could possibly do, and it will save thousands of lives.
It would be nice if political differences could be put aside, but those political differences do exist, and it would be very difficult politically for unions in the north to agree to anything that stopped free movement between the two islands. So does it need perhaps to be a two-island approach?
A two-island approach, certainly, and I think it should involve all the players. I mean, I've heard politicians say it's difficult, it's impossible. But I grew up in Belfast during the Troubles, and we've lost more people in Ireland because of this virus than we did in the whole of the Troubles. And we managed to get Ian Paisley and Martin McGuinness in an executive and a Good Friday Agreement and peace. Now, if we can do that, we can surely, just for about 12 months would do it, have cooperation in getting this virus under control. I mean, we need to get it down, we need to keep it down, and we need to keep it out. It's quite simple. We could be a zero COVID island, just like New Zealand, Taiwan. Lots of islands have done it, and we could now do it.
The government here is talking about mandatory quarantine for people coming from some countries, and they specifically mentioned South America, where obviously there's a very worrying variant emerging. Is that enough? Will that make enough difference?
I don't think it will. One of the things we know about international air travel is that it can be extraordinarily complicated to track people, and people move around the globe very rapidly and can change aeroplanes anywhere. And how do you know where someone has started from if you're asking them at a border post? You don't know where they've come from. They might have been through a transit lounge somewhere halfway around the world, and transit lounges are a great source of infection. So, and there are well-documented examples of the virus being brought on long journeys and infecting people along the way. So the only way to do this is a managed isolation on arrival, where people are put up in a hotel and quarantined for 14 days. And that, there isn't any way around it, and it should apply to everyone. One of the problems in England, although they had a voluntary system, a bit like the Irish one, of self-isolation, but only for 10 days these days, they had a huge list of exemptions. I counted 58 different occupational exemptions from it. And that just won't work. There can be no half measures with quarantine. You do it properly and you do it consistently. There's no way around that.
OK, Dr. Gabriel Scally, thanks indeed for joining us this evening.
The National Parents Council has said parents have been left completely in limbo about the reopening of schools after the Taoiseach said at the weekend that not all students will be back in the classrooms by St Patrick's Day. The comments come as discussions on the reopening of schools are continuing.
Ailish Drake and her husband run an architectural practice from their home in Limerick, while also trying to homeschool their 13 and 10-year-old sons. They've been taken aback by the news that the situation may continue for another 2 months.
I just felt it was a complete bombshell. I suppose I had thought maybe that they wouldn't be back on the 1st of February and that it would run into the midterm break. But when I heard the, talking about after St. Patrick's Day, and obviously we have Easter running very close to St. Patrick's Day this year, and it just feels like this is going to go on, and long term, it's not sustainable.
The National Parents Council say the government needs clear and evidence-based plans following the Taoiseach's comments that all students will not be back in the classroom by St Patrick's Day.
They're very in limbo at the moment. They're struggling to understand what the plan is, and I think we need more than sound bites through the media. We need an actual plan that gives a pathway to when these children will be back in school.
Experts say while prolonged school closures may not adversely impact students academically, some groups will feel it more than others.
I would worry a little bit about children who are in the transitional phases. So, for example, the ones who have come from early childhood education, which is so crucial to early development, and that's been cut off in March, and then maybe have started junior infants, and now this is cut off again. And equally those coming from, say, 6th class into secondary school.
Talks about the reopening of schools for children with additional educational needs are continuing, while discussions about contingency plans for the Leaving Cert are due to take place later this week. But it's still not clear when the timetable for the full reopening of schools will be made known. Samantha Library, RTE News at the Department of Education in Dublin.
The Port of Cork has seen a 10% increase in container traffic in the past 6 weeks. And with a new €86 million container terminal due to be commissioned in Ringaskiddy later this year, the port company says it's preparing for a Brexit bounce, with direct services to the continent already expanding.
Cork is a Tier 1 port of national significance, along with Dublin and Shannon Foynes. Cork handles an average of 10 million tonnes of cargo moving through the port every year. Brexit had presented as a threat, but thanks to direct services to the continent like this one between Cork and Zeebrugge, container volumes are up 10% over the past 6 weeks on this time last year.
I think the uncertainty that Brexit has brought to the traditional land bridge route through the UK has meant that the shippers are looking for stability around direct routes to Europe, and the new routes that we've introduced, and indeed the existing routes that we've enhanced, have ensured an increased volume in the Port of Cork.
The Port of Cork is currently investing €86 million in the construction of a new 13.5 hectare container terminal with a 360 metre quay alongside. The investment will future-proof Cork's ability to grow and to accommodate even higher volumes of cargo. The new terminal is due to be commissioned later this year.
Well, the new container terminal puts first-class infrastructure in place in this port, which is a tremendous opportunity for the region. There's every opportunity now with that as a clear signal to the international shipping market, which is pivoting based on the changing trade agreements with the UK. There's every reason for continued success.
Now that Brexit is a reality, freight companies have signalled that they will add bigger ships and increase the frequency of sailings to meet growing demand for a direct freight service between Ireland and the continent. Pascal Sheehy, RTE News, the Port of Cork.
A 63-year-old farmer from County Wexford is in the running to be named the greatest athlete of all time. The online vote is run by organisers of the World Games, an international event that includes sports not included in the Olympics.
It's decades now since James Kehoe took up the tug-of-war, with some prompting and help from family and friends.
It's the older brothers and the first cousins, and they're the ones that started. I came along later on, 3 or 4 years after they started. It was mandatory when everybody else was at.
The years have been good to the Bowley Tug-of-War Club, with national and international honours coming their way.
This is our first gold medal in London in 1985.
Now James is nominated for the title of Greatest Athlete of All Time, with the World Games, an alternative to the Olympics.
I was driving along the tractor one day. I heard my name was put forward, so I had no say in it.
He's in the top 10 against athletes from around the world.
We have our man on the podium at the moment and we'd like to keep him there. And I know first place seems far away at the minute, but you've got to believe that it is possible. And with your help and with your vote every 24 hours, we can keep him there.
It's an amazing honour for our family, for James and for the Tug-of-War Club and Tug-of-War in general, because it's about Tug-of-War. It's a team sport, but James has been a great ambassador for the sport.
Online voting at theworldgames.org continues until February the 1st. Conor Kane, RTE News, Ballycallan in County Wexford.
Still to come, get the Irish look. Fashion designer Laura Webber overwhelmed by reaction to the masks she designed for US First Lady Jill Biden.
And in sport, Chelsea sacked their manager Frank Lampard after 18 months in charge. The former PSG boss Thomas Tuchel is the man expected to replace him.
Because classes are happening at home right now, RTE is trying to make learning a bit more accessible.
By offering support to us students, our parents and our teachers.
So you'll find primary and secondary curriculum-based learning covering a variety of subjects.
Some we like, some we don't.
Across all RTE platforms, as well as complimentary content for everything from junior infant phonics to 6th year physics.
So do your homework and go to rte.ie/learn to find out more.
Let's get your mortgage in motion. With KBC, you can get some of the lowest fixed rates. And low rates mean low monthly repayments, which can make all the difference today and tomorrow. Just give us a call, pop into a hub, or chat to your mortgage broker. Let's get your move into a groove. We're ready when you are. KBC, the bank of you.
Born with 300 bones, 10,000 taste buds, their development fascinates us. That's why SMA Nutrition has been researching breast milk for over 70 years. SMA Pro follow-on milk is enriched with vitamin D to help support the normal function of baby's immune system. Science inspired by nature.
I used to not know what to put on my skin because my skin was dull and super dry. But now I know. With my new Olay Retinol 24, my skin is fresh and bright. I put it on at night, and when I wake up, I look in the mirror and I look at my skin because I'm like, what occurred overnight for my skin to be looking this bright and fresh? With Olay Retinol 24, my skin feels strong, bright, and hydrated. I'm Lily Singh, and I can face anything with my Olay Retinol 24. My skin feels awesome.
Olay Collection, now available at selected Dunn stores.
Innovation. Something that makes a statement without a word. What you do isn't you. How you look isn't who you are. Where you come from doesn't decide where you're going. A truly great car doesn't define you. You define it. Introducing the all-new BMW 2 Series Grand Coupe. Make it yours. Visit bmw.ie.
The Dunn family saved an incredible €434 thanks to a 4-week big save at Lidl.
Our house is mad.
Mental.
There's 6 people going around all the time, eating everything. Like him eating the fruit out of the fruit bowl.
They're constantly at the fridge. You know, they're trying more things.
Lidl have loads of choice and really good value. It's going to make a big difference to us every month.
The Dunn family saved an amazing €434 in 4 weeks with a big save at Lidl. More for you.
Welcome back. The main news this evening. The Cabinet is set to agree on new travel restrictions aimed at stopping the spread of COVID-19. Opposition parties are calling for mandatory quarantine for all incoming visitors. The European Commission has demanded that the pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca clearly explains where its COVID vaccine has been sent. It's thought doses ordered by EU member states may have been delivered elsewhere.
An Irish designer who embroidered Jill Biden's dress, coat and face mask for the presidential inauguration celebrations says she is humbled and overwhelmed by the reaction. Coordinating outfits with masks has become a growing trend since face coverings became mandatory here in certain settings last summer.
So the first thing you do is when you have your 2 pieces of cotton cut out.
We've come a long way since last summer when we were given tutorials on how to make face masks. Now they've become a fashion accessory for many, as was evident at the President's inauguration ceremony, where many attendees coordinated face masks with their outfits. Jill Biden's evening mask was embroidered by Irish designer Laura Webber from LW Pearl.
After this Jill Biden inauguration dress, coat and mask, the outpour has been unbelievable. I am so humbled. All the flowers were placed very, very specifically. The Delaware flower was placed on the left-hand side of the dress, close to her heart, and then she also wore the Delaware flower on her mask.
Other Irish designers have also turned their focus to face masks.
So Irish designers pivoted using their surplus stock to turn it into gorgeous masks like silks and linens from the likes of Natalie B. Coleman to Helen Cody to Helen Steele. So they really utilised those fabrics and turned it into something positive by creating masks that are fashionable and functional.
Many companies have made major changes to adapt to the increased demand for functional and fashionable masks.
I normally have 2 people working with me, but it went up to 30 now since last March. And we make face coverings all day long. For weddings, people have been asking me to match their face covering with their outfit.
Face masks in many guises will continue to decorate our faces for many months to come. Diane Connor, RTE News.
Now, this evening, the Department of Health has confirmed that there have been 1,372 new cases here of COVID-19 and that 7 more people with the virus have died. The 14-day incidence rate per 100,000 nationally now stands at 766.2. There are 1,948 people in hospital with COVID-19. 219 of them are in intensive care. And of the tests carried out over the past 7 days, 9.2% tested positive. In Northern Ireland, a further 17 people have died with COVID-19 and authorities confirmed there that another 422 people have tested positive there for COVID-19. Well, let's go live now to the Department of Health and our health correspondent, Fergal Bowers. Fergal, some breaking news there just in the last few minutes in relation to the vaccination rollout here. Can you tell us what's going to happen?
Yes, community vaccination is going to begin in mid-February, we're told. That's subject to regulatory approval. So the first group of people would be 85 years and over, then people aged 80 to 84, 75 to 79 and 70 to 74. Now, Ireland, we're told, is going to receive a vaccine delivery of the AstraZeneca vaccine within the expected range for February, but at the lower end of that range. And then the delivery in March, we're told by the Minister for Health, it's likely to be considerably lower than what was originally stated by AstraZeneca.
And Fergal, we heard the figures there just a short time ago. What has the Deputy Chief Medical Officer been saying this evening about those statistics?
Well, we saw 7 further deaths, and all of those in January. The age range, we're told, of those who died is 43 years to 94 years of age. So today, 1,372 cases reported. So we are seeing, a reduction in those daily figures. They are starting to come down. We're told this evening there's 1,905 confirmed cases in hospital and 219 of those patients in intensive care.
All right, Fergal, thank you for those updates. Now, let's check in with Joe for all of today's sports news.
Katrina, thanks very much. Good evening to you. Well, there are 2 uncapped players in a 36-man Ireland squad for the Guinness Six Nations, Craig Casey and Tom O'Toole. But there are notable absentees too, as Ireland assemble in preparation to take on Wales on February 7th.
It's rare for there to be joy with no disappointment when it comes to squad announcements. And for the group picked by Andy Farrell for his second Six Nations, it's no different.
Delighted that young Craig Casey has got into the squad, but he seems to have leapfrogged a lot of very good players in Kieran Marion, Johnny Cooney and Luke McGrath, who I thought played well for Leinster on Saturday night.
And there are others too who may feel aggrieved.
Little disappointed to see, the likes of Ryan Baird not included up front. And Dan Levy, it appears as if, he did get a knock, wasn't involved with Leinster last Saturday night, so it looks as if it's a little bit early for him.
Tadhg Furlong's inclusion, after almost a year out of the game, is a big plus. But given how the autumn went for Ireland, there is a degree of pressure on Andy Farrell.
It's going to be a difficult championship for Ireland. We have France and England in Dublin by virtue of the fact that there will be no supporters in the Aviva Stadium. That really takes away that advantage. So it's going to be a very challenging period, I think, for Andy Farrell. A very competitive Six Nations on the horizon.
So for Ireland, it's all eyes on Cardiff and a date with Wales on Sunday week. Justin Tracy, RTE News.
Well, staying with rugby, Leinster have issued an injury update following their win over Munster at the weekend. Ireland captain Johnny Sexton is expected to be fit for the Six Nations opener. The province say he picked up what was a minor muscle injury at the weekend, and he'll be further assessed by the IRFU medical team this week. James Lowe too is to be assessed by the national camp, while Dan Levy and Tadhg Furlong will increase their training this week. Now, meanwhile, senior coach Stuart Lancaster has addressed speculation concerning his future with the province.
Yes, there's plenty of chat, I see. But certainly I haven't committed anything at the moment, but there's plenty of talks going on behind the scenes. I'm very happy here.
Frank Lampard has been sacked by Chelsea. The club made the decision after a recent poor run that saw them fall to 9th in the Premier League table. Former Paris Saint-Germain boss Thomas Tuchel is expected to take over at Stamford Bridge.
Yesterday, Frank Lampard must have thought the pressure on him had eased.
And it is an absolutely sensational goal. Brilliant teamwork from Chelsea.
The Tammy Abraham hat-trick saw Chelsea beat Luton to go through to the 5th round of the FA Cup. But this morning, rumours began to swirl that Lampard would be sacked, and by lunchtime, he was gone. A run of 5 defeats in 8 Premier League games saw the Blues slip to 9th in the table, prompting owner Roman Abramovich to act. Abramovich said it had been a very difficult decision. 42-year-old Lampard, a much-loved former player and still the London club's top scorer, had little managerial experience when he took charge 18 months ago. The club spent £220 million on players during the summer transfer window and were clearly not happy with the return on their investment. Lampard's fellow managers expressed support and sympathy.
You have to win, if not you will be sacked. respect the decision from Chelsea, of course, but a huge hug from Frank, and hopefully I can see him soon when the lockdown will be over.
It's now expected that German Thomas Tuchel, recently sacked by Paris Saint-Germain, will be appointed as Chelsea's next head coach. Claire McNamara, RTE News.
To golf, despite his third place finish in the Abu Dhabi Championship over the weekend, Rory McIlroy has dropped 1 place in golf's world rankings. The Ulster man is now down to 7th, while the tournament winner Tyrrell Hatton has moved up to 5th. That's his highest ever position. McIlroy's in America this week for his first PGA Tour of the event of the season. That's in San Diego. Shane Lowry, who missed the cut in Abu Dhabi, drops to number 36 in the world. Dustin Johnson remains at number 1. And staying with matters of the US, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will face reigning champions, the Kansas City Chiefs, in the Super Bowl on February 7th. The Buccaneers quarterback Tom Brady will play in his 10th Super Bowl. His side beat the Green Bay Packers last night, while the Chiefs got the better of the Buffalo Bills. It will be a 10th appearance in 19 years for 43-year-old Brady, as the Buccaneers become the first team in the NFL's history to play a Super Bowl at their home ground.
Now home Super Bowl for the first time in NFL history, I think puts a lot of cool things in perspective. Anytime you're the first time doing something, it's usually a pretty good thing. So now we just got to go, have a great 2 weeks, prepare for whoever it is, and, be ready to go.
And Tom concludes this evening's sport. So back to you, David.
Thanks, Joe. Before we go, a look at the main news again. The Cabinet is set to agree on new travel restrictions aimed at stopping the spread of COVID-19. Opposition parties are calling for mandatory quarantine for all incoming visitors. This evening, the Department of Health confirmed 1,372 new cases, while 7 more people have died with COVID-19. And you can continue watching tonight's NEFIT briefing, which is underway at the Department of Health on the RTE News channel.
You can also keep up to date with it and plenty more on the RTE News app. Well, that is the 6-1 News this Monday. From all the team, thanks for watching. We'll see you at the same time again tomorrow. But until then, goodbye and do take care.
Lads. Oh, thank you. I will.
Enjoy the great taste and nutritional benefits of Avonmore lactose-free milk.
Hello there and a very good evening to you. Well, there is a change on the way for our weather. We're going to see it becoming noticeably milder with rain at times. But in the meantime, in the shorter term, we are still going to see very frosty, icy conditions tonight, especially over parts of Leinster, Ulster. And we have issued a yellow level snow ice warning for Cavan, Monaghan, Leitrim and Donegal, and there are equivalent warnings in operation by the UK Met Office for the rest of Ulster. And the reason for that is that as the rain pushes up, it will fall as sleet and snow in places overnight with a sharp frost early in the night. But it will be short-lived. This milder area is going to push over us, becoming well established over us later on tomorrow and then for Wednesday and Thursday as well. Now we can see on the satellite sequence this band of cloud making its way in towards us. That's associated with this weather system here, which is going to bring rain up across the country as we go through tonight. But as it meets the cold air, it will fall as sleet or snow in parts of Ulster in particular. But any snow will be fairly short-lived as that system clears away tomorrow morning and the milder air becomes established. And once that milder air does become established, we will see more bands of rain pushing up from the southwest as we go through Wednesday, to be followed then by more unsettled conditions and further spells of rain as we move from Thursday on into Friday. So our weather turning much milder and more unsettled over the coming days. But in the meantime, for this evening, most places dry, but you can see the first of outbreaks of rain. They're developing along the west coast and they'll push that bit further inland this evening and early tonight. All the while, Leinster and Ulster will continue cold and clear. So we will see frost and ice developing quite quickly over the next couple of hours. And then later in the night, as that rain and sleet pushes further to the north, it will increasingly turn to sleet and perhaps snow in parts of Ulster in particular. And do note we have that yellow level warning in operation. Eventually, though, the winds will tend to increase from a southerly direction and swing to a westerly direction then as we go through tomorrow. And for tomorrow itself, with still some sleet or hill snow up in the north, rain down along the east coast, but drier, brighter weather will all the time follow through from the west to all areas during the day. And the day will be quite cold up in Ulster, only 3 or 4 degrees, but much warmer to the south, 11 degrees in places. Good evening.
Yes! Enjoy the great taste and nutritional benefits of Avonmore lactose-free milk.
Before you arrive at your opinion,